Hello there, thank you so much for stopping by. My name is ChitChad and welcome back to another episode of Planet Coaster, where we are working on the Super Mario Super Theme Park. Today's episode, we're going to continue the build process for the Odyssey People Mover attraction. We're going to make a couple of stations for this attraction, and we're also going to be adding some warp pipes here at the entrance. We're actually going to use some of the old warp pipes that I made a while ago for the old video game park when we were working on that Mario section of the park and building these warp pipes for the Mario Kart attraction. And I thought, oh hey, I have these giant warp pipes that took me forever to build, let's just use those. But I'm going to modify them a little bit just because the amount of scenery pieces that go into it is ridiculous. It actually takes it a little while for these things to load, and it's cool because you can kind of see it in layers. It's almost like an old scanner. It's like it's like a scan line. It's like doing them in sections, and then it goes back and fills in those sections. It's a little intense, so I figured let's try and simplify it a little bit more, and that way it's a little bit nicer to my game file, and we don't get any frame rate drops, because I'm trying to avoid that like the plague now that I finally got my computer in order and it's not misbehaving and acting like a jerk and giving me 2 frames a second. I'm glad those days are over, but we're always going to do the best we can with optimizing. So you'll see, I was trying to come up with some ways to maybe create that shape a little bit more effectively, but the thing that breaks my heart, that continues to break my heart, is that we can't use building pieces the same way we use scenery pieces. You can't just take a building piece and then rotate it the other direction, and then, if it's flat on the ground, you can't flip it and then turn it 90 degrees. It's flat on the ground, that's all it will do, which is kind of a bummer. So I think these pieces that I ended up using are the fountain pieces, which are from the earliest version of the game. I'm pretty sure I've used those plenty of times. Which is funny, I actually got a comment the other day about my old DreamWorks park, which was the first thing I made in Planet Coaster back in the alpha days. And if I would ever revisit that park, because those videos aren't even live anymore because they were on my other channel, which that channel is now more for art and animation and VO. So I took them off that channel just because the search algorithm kept pointing people to that channel for Planet Coaster stuff. So it was confusing a lot of people, so I had to take those down. But that park, man, I actually jumped into it not too long ago to see if I could pull anything out of it, because I do have some blueprints that I made in that park. And boy, oh boy, things are broken in that park now. There's rides aren't working, paths are broken. A lot of the scenery pieces have changed. Maybe, I don't know if the order has changed, but a lot of them are just straight up either missing or have been reverted back to a previous state of color. So there's a lot of red everywhere where there shouldn't be. It should be gray, but there's a lot of red everywhere. So I was like, huh, that's interesting. So it would be fun to revisit some of those ideas, but I don't think I would ever be able to revisit that part just because of how it would take me forever just to get it back to the way it was. And that was so long ago. I feel like I hopefully I've gotten a little bit better since then at making things. Maybe just a little, a tiny bit. Like I said, in today's episode, we're going to be making stations for the monorail, the Odyssey monorail. I said monorail. Oh, no, I promised myself I wouldn't call it a monorail. I'm so used to saying that instead of people mover. The people mover. Oh, I feel terrible. But back when I started making this park, there was no people mover. It was either going to be a monorail or a train was going to be the transportation ride for this park. So that's why I'm so glad. I'm so glad we have a people mover. It's amazing. I love its design so much. I just thought this was perfect for this park. And it's really cool to go back to older sections of the park and start making, new things for it, especially the Yoshi area. Man, we haven't been here in such a long time. It's fun to actually have a new building for it, which of course I'm reutilizing a lot of the previous structures that I've already created, mostly to save on time, just because I know this project is taking a while and there's a lot of other things we still need to get to, like the animations for Luigi's Mansion, like the Mario Kart ride, and then maybe there'll be some other stuff that we add in the future. So I'm trying my best to kind of, maintain the creativity, but also keep it moving, In the next episode, we're actually going to be building some more custom scenery pieces that are going to be used for the entrance of this park. We're going to continue building the stations out just to give more flair. And again, the reason I wanted to start this now rather than later was because we're kind of retroactively adding all this track into these areas of the park instead of doing it proactively. And I definitely want to do it more proactively once we get towards Princess Peach's castle, just because that's going to be such a huge main focal point for the park, that the People Mover is going to go through that, and it's also going to be the housing of the Mario Kart attraction. So I really wanted to start planning this now, and it's also just really fun to have something that kind of just links everything together. It's starting to feel like a full park, you know? And I want a lot of interactive moments too, so I think if I start doing this now, I can add more of those interactive parts to this attraction. And what I mean is, if you think of that, the People Mover in either Disney California or Disney World in Florida, the Magic Kingdom, there's these really cool moments where you go through other attractions, whether it's the one in California that goes through Star Tours or the one in Florida that goes right through Space Mountain. There's just these really stinking cool moments, and I want to have those. And I think going through Princess Peach's castle is a really cool moment, and hopefully we'll be able to make it so that they can actually see the carts going by. And that's the moment that I kind of wanted in Luigi's Mansion, but it's just so impractical where we're at in the build stage. You know, had I thought, or had I known that I was going to be building a I did it again! Oh! Had I known I was going to be doing a People Mover attraction, I would have maybe thought that out a little bit more, so we could have had the People Mover actually go through Luigi's Mansion, which maybe if I have time, I'll try and figure out, but I got to just finish Luigi's Mansion first before I even start thinking of throwing a People Mover in there. And, it actually makes me think of the old Pokemon build that I was working on. One of the original ideas was to have the monorail go through that attraction, that the Pikachu's Adventure ride that I made, the Dark Ride. And that's another thing too, now that we have screens and we can build 3D objects, there's so many things I would love to do. It would be so much fun to go back and make another Pokemon thing. I'm a huge Pokemon fan, just so we all know. I'm actually really excited for, what do they call it now? Pokemon Shield and Sword, because we've run out of other elements and rock types. Now we're calling them Shield and Sword. Next one will be called Paper and Pencil. But I actually really like the new starters. They are adorable. This is one of the first times where I really like all three. Back in the original, I think even the original and second generation, I really like all three of the starters. But it's been a while since I would be like, I'm still gonna pick the Fire Rabbit in hopes that it's not a fighting fire. But I do like all of them. I think they're really cool. And speaking of dark rides, one of the things that I do a lot is, and it's funny because I've always picked kind of like one at a time to really get like enamored with, but I love doing like deep dives into like the history of like rides, especially dark rides. I love coasters, don't get me wrong, but I really like themed and dark rides. I love the animatronics. I love the creativity that goes into it beyond just the ingenuity and the technology, you know. Of course, that all plays, especially in coasters, but there's like this beautiful combination of the tech, the art, and the mechanism. You know, everything's got to kind of like work together and flow. It's like a crazy piece of art, and that's why I go into deep dives. And recently, and you could hear it if you've watched like multiple videos of this series, where I've kind of been a little obsessed of the Jurassic Park ride, just because I've been going on that ride since I was a kid. And what they're doing with it right now with the Jurassic World revamp, reskin, whatever you want to call it, I've been looking on the internet to try and find like images of what they're doing. And of course there's like that leaked concept of the Indominus T-Rex fight at the finale, which is going to be so cool. But before that, I was really like mesmerized by the dinosaur ride over at Disney's Animal Kingdom, just because one, I really like Indiana Jones and it's the same ride vehicle, same track layout, but because they're also dinosaurs. As you can tell, I like dinosaurs. Love Jurassic Park, love the dinosaur ride, and I'm a Power Rangers fan, so it's just kind of like, it's the trifecta of, and Land Before Time, the OG Land Before Time. It's just the trifecta of dino love here. And the dinosaur ride's really cool. Especially, it's fun now to go and do those deep dives because camera technology has gotten so much better, especially with low light capture, where we can see a lot of these really intense, cool details. Which there's a moment in the dinosaur ride where the Carnotaurus like charges the Jeep that you're on, and it's off to the left side, and that ride's so dark you don't really get to appreciate it. But when you can actually see it in either low light or when they actually have, there's been some like footage of it with the lights on. I think they do it for like press or for employees, which is kind of cool. But when you see the mechanism that drives it, it's actually kind of terrifying because it's literally like the bust of I almost said T-Rex, a Carnotaurus, like charging you, and that mechanism like looks so insanely powerful at how fast that thing can move. And that's like the speed that some of these animatronics are able to get, like the ones on the Jaws ride. You got to think those sharks are underwater, which RIP Jaws, not around anymore, at least the Orlando version. I think it still exists in Japan, but you got to think how powerful those machines have to be in order to propel this giant animatronic shark. And it also got me thinking, another ride that I was really obsessed with for a while was Expedition Everest. I remember being there, seeing it built. I was very young at the time. And then I remember we were going back to Florida, which I've only been to Florida, I think maybe 3 times. And we were going there while Expedition Everest was kind of doing its like soft opening. So we didn't know if it was actually going to be in operation when we got there. And I remember it was a great trip, but getting there was an absolute nightmare. We had canceled flights. We had to stay at the airport for like 8 hours, 10 hours because our flights kept getting delayed, and we eventually had to get on like this puddle jumper, which is a tiny little plane. And I've been on 4-passenger planes, and those don't scare me as much as like a tiny commercial airline puddle jumper. It was like a 12-passenger plane, and you felt everything, every bump, every shift. A cloud could fart and you would probably hear it and feel it. It was insane. But when we were at the airport during one of our delays, I remember talking to my grandparents about this ride and just saying, "Oh, I hope it's open. This looks so cool." And one of the guys that was in the waiting room with us chimed in, and he was just like, "Oh, I'm a contractor. I actually got to work on part of that ride." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm meeting a person that worked on a ride. That's insane!" And he was just telling us how cool the ride was, and that he was able to actually go on it during kind of like the I wouldn't call it a test, but the people that worked on the ride got to ride it first. That only seems fair, right? So he was telling me about it, and then we actually were lucky enough to be able to go on it. And another really cool experience is we were talking about animatronics just being crazy strong. Specifically, the Yeti. And a lot of people know this, but for those that don't, like the Yeti animatronic was one of the largest that Disney produced at the time. And it was so cool because they were actually showing some footage, like behind the scenes footage of it before the ride was even open. And it was behind a tarp, so you really couldn't see it, other than the sheer scale of this thing was enormous. And it was so powerful. It moved so quickly. And I was actually able to go on that ride while it was still what's called A mode. And A mode means it's fully functional. It's doing everything that it was intended to do. But the animatronic was so crazy intense that it actually cracked the column, the concrete stand that it was on. And it was, I don't remember if it was either due to them not getting the right mixture or just that they didn't think that it could happen with this animatronic in general. But ever since then, it's been in B mode and has been dubbed Disco Yeti simply because now they just blow fans and flash a light on it, which I've seen both versions. I saw A mode, and then the last time that we went back, which was many, many years ago, it was in B mode, which was the Disco Yeti. And it's very upsetting just getting to see something that sheer scale. And we're talking about, like the art and the creativity that goes behind these sort of things. And it's just such a bummer because it's almost like it's like an unfinished piece of artwork, you get to see it once and then you never get to see it again. It's kind of a bummer. And that's why I like doing these kind of things. I like building stuff in Planet Coaster. I like these theme park games just because it's such creativity and it's so much fun, especially sharing ideas and seeing other people's builds. And that's what I enjoy so much about this game. And ever since I was a kid, I've just been always enthralled with these creatures and these animatronics that they're building. Some of the stuff that they're doing for the new Star Wars land is absolutely incredible, and I just love doing that kind of deep dive. And I'm hoping to eventually incorporate more of the creative, the animation, and maybe even getting into some 3D modeling, because that's the stuff I really like. Just gotta find the time to do it, which is always the tough part. But hey, we're actually towards the end of today's episode, so I want to thank you all so much for watching. Happy Friday. There's going to be another new episode of the Studios Park coming out soon. And then for the next episode of this park, we're going to continue working on the Mario Odyssey attraction. We're going to be adding more stations, more scenery pieces. Can't wait to share it. Stick around. Thank you so much. And as always, I will chat with you on the next episode.